Hi, everyone. I want to thank you for coming to our session. We're going to talk about what we call the Okta on Okta story, how we use lifecycle management internally to enhance productivity and security. And the two presenters are going to be me, Ken Neff, I'm a senior enterprise architect, and Laura Beaverson, who's a senior identity engineer on the Okta and Okta team. We want to start with sort of three topics we're going to walk through. The first is Okta on Okta, what's possible, the art of the possible. And we're going to be talking both about what can be done in terms of pushing the envelope with Okta lifecycle management, and then also what should be done, some of the lessons we've learned from some of the things we've done as early adopters of Okta technology. We want to talk also about some of the innovations we've done in our previous fiscal year around workflows and around CIAM internally and with our customers. And then we also want to talk about the win-win situation we have at Okta when we work, the Okta and Okta team and Okta internally work with our product organization to get early access to products and to give early feedback, and then also deploying those products internally, becoming customer number one for a lot of our new products and features. So to start, let's actually look at some of the things that you might or might not know. The first is Okta free trial is how a lot of people, whether they're prospects, developers, or customers, get access to a new Okta org. You can go to the website and you can ask for a free trial, and we'll set you up with that. Well, back in 2019, our marketing organization wanted to revamp the free trial process because they wanted to better serve developers, prospects, and customers, and they wanted to have more flexibility built into the process. So, based on their requirements, we started looking around at technical solutions. About that same time, Okta acquired Azuqua, which eventually became Okta Workflows. So we started literally a week after that acquisition on a POC to see if workflows wasn't a key part, couldn't be a key part of that solution. And the result of that is it since July of last year, if you signed up for a free trial by coming to the Okta.com, Workflows was actually the orchestration engine that drove that process from end to end. On the other end, on the customer side, CIAM and workflows actually enabled your Octane 21 registration. So back in Octane 19, that was the first time, the first Okta event that we had CIAM-driven registration. And it had some challenges. It was a little bit of a rocky start. And now, and we'll talk about this in some detail, we've got a cookie cutter process that drives all Okta events and keeps an independence between marketing tech stack on the front end, doing the registration with all of the marketing collateral around it, and then workflows actually driving the identity and access management. So those are just a couple things that we've done. And now Laura's going to talk to us a little bit about how we engage internally with Okta in Okta.
Hey, everybody. One of my favorite things about being on this team is that we're in a unique position to talk about what the product is actually doing for us or what it's not doing for us as IT engineers. Obviously, we have a great relationship with our customers and we get amazing feedback that way, but my team is an always on resource for product when they need the voice of IT. We get to advocate not only for ourselves, but for our customers and our fellow IT engineers. So we've had these great relationships with our managers, and now we have a formalized partnership in which we give feedback on new features and deploy them internally. So everybody who works at Okta gets a sneak peek at what's coming. This gives us an opportunity to get more well-rounded feedback to product, and it helps our customer-facing teams sell better. When a feature on the roadmap is in beta, we have a kickoff meeting with the PM and we talk about the feature and its purpose. We'll take a week or two to configure and test out the feature in a separate Okta tenant, and then we'll regroup with product and we'll give them our thoughts. So there's no focus on QA here. Our feedback is more about how the feature will serve us. Do we have internal use cases for this feature? Is there anything missing from it? Do IT admins think differently than the product feature anticipates? And of course, is it suitable for scale? So sometimes our feedback will change a feature and sometimes not. But once product has taken our feedback into account and made any changes, we deploy the feature once it reaches early access status. We'll continue to collect feedback from our end users and our fellow IT admins and pass it on to product as well. Now, as somebody who's done this process end to end many times, I love the results. Ultimately, this gives everybody at Okta a better understanding of our own product and allows us to take advantage of what we're all here to sell. So, with that, let's get into the good stuff with workflows.
Thanks, Laura. So let's talk about free trial. I told you a little bit about it, but let's actually walk into the details around the free trial process if you come to our website. First thing is obviously you come to www.okta.com, you sign up for a free trial. We want to deliver that as quickly as possible. And what we've done is we've enabled workflows to drive that process. First, workflows just reaches out to the Okta system and says, provision me an org. And we hand that back to the user. That's the interaction you have with it. It's real time, it's fast, so that you get the Okta org as quickly as possible and you're on your way working with Okta. But there's more that needs to go on there. And so what we've done then is once that process is done, we start some asynchronous processes. First, to talk to our marketing automation system, Marketo. Reach out, let them know who you are so that they can track your progress, give you any additional information as you go through your life cycle of learning about Okta. And then, actually more importantly, what we want to do is provision you with access to Okta Help Center. That's where you can go to open a support case, to get knowledge articles, to ask questions, or to give us feedback about the products. To do that, we have to provision you through our Salesforce system. That's a fairly involved process because what we're trying to do is find out, are you already registered? Do we already know about you? We don't want to duplicate your information. So there's a fair amount of work that goes into finding out who you are, what company you belong to, and registering you correctly in the system. Since that's an involved process and there might be delays, there might be errors, we might have to do retries, we take advantage of the tables capability inside workflows and we log our activity as it's going on so that if there are any problems, we can go back and we can do a retry and send that data later. And we also leverage those tables plus other workflows cards to be able to send notifications. So if there's a problem with the system, we can open a ServiceNow ticket directly so someone can address it. We can also use Slack and email to notify people internally. This is a pretty detailed, pretty involved process with a large set of flows. And it was one of our first really broad experiences with workflows. And so there's some lessons that I want to share with you that we found out during this process. The first is workflows is an orchestration engine. It's not a programming language. It's not an IDE. So one of the lessons that I personally had to learn during this is let the native systems do the heavy lifting. I was kind of like a kid in a candy shop when it came to workflows. Oh, it can do this. Oh, it's got this capability. Let's just do all those things. And what you see there on the right, that eye chart, is actually the decision flow to find out if you register for a free trial. Do we already know about you? Can we do a fuzzy match against your name, against your email? Are you a new developer? Are you a user in an existing customer? Are you a prospect? And if so, do we know about you or do we not know about you? So that we can decide where to put you inside the system and ultimately to provision you with access to the Help Center. On our first POC, we try to do that entirely within workflows, and it can do all of that. But the data's all in Salesforce and the logic's all in Salesforce. So why reproduce it in workflows? So instead, when we actually went to the production implementation, we moved that work into Salesforce, and workflows simply makes a couple of API calls, lets Salesforce do what it natively does, and then moves on with the process. The second lesson is simplify. In one sense, you can think of workflows like you would a development project that you're doing in some programming language. By using subflows, you can logically divide the work being done, the subflows that are authenticating with a system, subflows that are processing data from a different system, subflows that are error handling or doing retries, so that you can A, test them individually to make sure they're working, which is built-in capabilities and workflows, and B, tie them together with a parent flow that coordinates everything so that you have a simple set of flows and an easy way to manage them, to version them over time, to modify them, to test them. And then the third lesson is around error handling and retry. And that's really leverage the native capabilities of workflows. It has tables, use them. We use them in free trial for logging, for monitoring, for retry, for error handling, and then use the workflows connectors for notification. We're using, as I said, we're using the ServiceNow connector to open up ServiceNow tickets if something needs to be done for a specific use case, or if there's a problem and we need to go troubleshoot it. And we use notifications through Slack to Slack channels because, like most people, we kind of live on Slack. And we use email notifications as well. So those are some of our lessons learned around workflows. And it's one of our larger workflows implementation in free trials is, but it's far and away, as Laura's going to tell you, far and away from being the only, because we have quite a lot of uses there. One of the others that I want to talk about that I talked about you in the sort of did you know earlier is Okta events, how we're using customer identity and again leveraging workflows, but for a different purpose. If you signed up for Octane, then you went through this process. And basically, what we wanted to do was allow the marketing organization to do whatever they want in setting things up, in advertising, in registration. We wanted to make it as simple as possible for users, whether they're customers or prospects or developers or anyone who wanted to attend Octane, to get in as easily as possible. So the first question we ask is, are you a customer? If you are a customer, it's easy. You SSO in, and we send you to the registration page. You sign up, you're done. If you're not a customer, then we send you to a registration form that says, give me a little bit of information about you, and we feed that to workflows. Because there, we want to make a decision. Do we already know about you? Or are you somebody that's never been to an Okta event? If we already know about you, if you've been to any other Okta event, then you're already registered. And again, all you have to do is SSO in, and you can sign up for Octane 21. If we don't know about you, then we want to register you, and you'll get an activation email. Again, you SSO in, and then you sign up for Octane. And what's cool about this and what's important for making this reusable is that we've separated the MarTech stack from the identity and access management. So marketing can do what they do best, and they can use any tech stack they want. Anyone who's worked with a marketing organization knows that it's a fast-paced environment, and they're constantly changing the tools and the technology they use. What we've done here is said, you do what you do best, and we'll do what we do best. And so identity and access management is separate. It's entirely within our organization, and it's completely reusable. So that's how you registered for Octane 21, and that's how we'll be able to use this going forward for all other Okta events. And now I want to turn to lifecycle management. Sort of the theme of this session, which is how do we manage lifecycle management within Okta? To do that, I want to hand it over to Laura to first talk about the Okta employee journey.
All right. Lifecycle management at Okta today involves three major stages. We've got onboarding, in which we generate a new hire's access to resources. And the stage now includes a new phase called pre-onboarding that Ken will tell us more about in a minute. Next, we secure the employee's identity and access throughout their tenure. And of course, we have offboarding, pretty standard stuff, end your active sessions, revoke your access when you leave the company. Now, we have over 100 Birthright applications alone. And when you multiply each of these steps by the number of employees hired during enterprise rapid growth, it's a big to-do list for your help desk. So Workflows helps us out a lot here. We have 190 individual active workflows. 34 of those are in lifecycle management, 42 of those are in access management, 45 are in security, and this includes everything: compliance and user self-service, so users can reset their passwords, they can report suspicious account activity, and we even do some endpoint management, actually. I know it's not LCM related, but Workflows helps us track patch management and asset inventory. So let's get into the weeds and talk about some of these workflows. Ken, take us through pre-onboarding.
So pre-hire onboarding is something that we just added this year. I joined Okta about 2 years ago. And then what you did was you came into a room. Remember coming into a room with people? So you came into a room, we talked about the Okta environment, our big initiatives, sort of employee indoctrination, what it is, what you're going to be working on, who you are, who Okta is. But then you got handed a laptop And we spent a bunch of time going through the normal new employee steps, setting up insurance, setting up tax information, withholding, uh, direct deposit, all the things you have to do in order to actually be an employee. Well, that takes a lot of time. And we realized, wouldn't it be better if we could use first day onboarding to really just talk about Okta? What are you going to do for Okta? What are you going to be able to work on? Get to know people, get started. And what we did there was we decided we could take all those sort of must do steps and move them before onboarding so that you could take care of all of the paperwork, if it were, before you actually showed up for day one. And that's what we've done. And that really changes the whole onboarding process, getting employees productive, and actually setting up lines of communication before you show up on day one. And how that works is pretty straightforward. Our application tracking system is Greenhouse. So when you interview, all that data goes into Greenhouse. And at the point where we make an offer, you accept the offer, and you're ready to become an Okta employee, that drives into Workday, which is our primary, that drives all of our lifecycle management. And Workday reaches out to Okta, and that, again, calls workflows. And what workflows is going to do is it's going to say, all right, is your background check complete? Are we within 15 days of your hire date? And if so, then it looks at your security category inside Workday. And if you're a pre-employee self security category and you're a full-time employee or an intern, not a contingency worker or a contractor, then it's going to go ahead and it's going to send you an activation email. And what that does is it lets you, the new hire, MFA into Okta before your day of hire, as long as it's within those 15 days before your day of hire. And that's going to let you into our people portal. And once you're in our people portal, you can fill out all the paperwork. You can get that all done before you show up. And basically, we've gotten almost 3/4 of the onboarding tasks. I think the stat actually says 72% of all your onboarding tasks are now handled in pre-onboarding. So your employee onboarding is all about Okta, not about paperwork. From that point on, I'm going to let Laura walk into what happens with the rest of your life cycle.
Thanks, Ken. When it comes time for the employee to actually start, we rely on the Workday integration to get the employee data that we need into Okta to grant access to the right resources. Birthright applications can differ depending on a lot of factors. Department is probably the most obvious one because different roles require different resources, but location matters too. A new hire in one of our APAC offices doesn't need to access a US payroll application. They have their own. So Okta syncs in real time with Workday to bring over attributes such as business unit, location, and employee type. We then use group roles to automatically populate groups based on these attributes. And instead of assigning these Birthright applications to users individually, we assign them to the group. So it's one manual assignment versus the number of assignments it would be if we multiply it by the number of users with a particular attribute. This also reassures us that a user's access to resources is appropriate all the time, because if a user transfers out of a department, the access goes with it. Once the user is automatically placed in the group, the application is assigned to them. We also take advantage of SCIM, which manages all of the downstream application account management. All of this allows us to take the pressure off of our help desk so that they can spend their time on more value-add initiatives. This also enables our new hires to spend their first day actually getting started instead of sending a billion requests to IT. So this covers the onboarding stage. Now let's talk about how we use workflows to manage security through the course of an employee's time at Okta. I mentioned earlier that we use workflows to streamline the reporting of suspicious account activity. So everybody knows those emails that you get when you sign into an account from a new device or a new browser. Well, Okta's end user security alerts actually include a button that allows users to report the action directly from the email if they don't recognize the activity. So we took this button a few steps further with workflows. Using the report feature will immediately clear active sessions for the user, including in downstream applications. It will reset their account password, and it will suspend the Okta account. This also immediately pages the IT team to investigate. The event is logged separately so that our IT team doesn't have to spend time sifting through syslog by hand, And if IT determines that it's not a false positive, workflows will escalate it to security. The wins here are that we don't have to depend on employees to type up and submit a ticket and then wait for an IT admin to see the ticket and act on it. Time is really precious in these scenarios, and workflows helps us prevent losing time in a potentially serious event. And we actually build compliance into lifecycle management as well. So let's take a look at one of our FedRAMP controls next. One of the challenges that companies face, especially as they scale, is the reliance on manual termination processes. So catch-all controls in the event of human error are crucial. This kind of control is great to implement if you have any kind of manual work in your offboarding process. So here we have an Okta automation that suspends a user account after 30 days of inactivity. Now, employees do go on leave, so this also emails the user with instructions on how to reach out to HR if they need their access restored. And of course, the Okta session is one thing, but what about all those business applications? That's where the actual data is. So Workflows picks up where the automation leaves off. It will detect the change in user state to suspended and end sessions and suspend accounts in the downstream critical business applications. Workflows also reports the suspensions that were performed by this policy to our HR team so that if something was missed, IT and HR can work on it together and figure it out. Now let's take a look at how we use workflows to report on access management for SOX applications. So those of you who know SOX work understand that it brings a lot of really stringent access controls to your financial apps. And the biggest time sink, I know you all know my pain here, is periodic access reviews. Here's how we take the elbow grease out of getting these reviews done for NetSuite. So at Okta, we actually use Okta to master NetSuite, meaning that access management tasks such as account creation and role management are actually performed by app admins in Okta rather than in the NetSuite admin console. The benefit of this is that it gives us the ability to report on access in real time. So every time that an employee is assigned to NetSuite or the role is updated, it is immediately logged into a table and reported to the app owners and the compliance team. So typically, if there's an issue with somebody's access, you discover it in one of two ways. Either during your periodic access review or when you're pulling evidence for walkthroughs with external auditors. Neither of those are great. In both scenarios, you have to scramble to get the issue fixed by a deadline, and sometimes it's a tight one. But real-time reporting gives us the ability to catch things as they occur, and it gives us room to breathe. Now, there's one more use case I want to talk about for access management during an employee's tenure, and that's how we provision and deprovision access to our internal tools. This is easily our most robust implementation of workflows yet. The entire process for these resources, from the initial user request to deprovisioning, is handled by workflows. So say an engineer needs access to a customer's Okta account in order to help them. Here's what the process looks like for them to get that access. They submit a request for access for the appropriate resource for a set period of time, let's say 2 weeks. Workflows will send the request to various approvers for review, and there are multiple layers of approvals depending on the resource being requested. So Workflows understands the context of each different resource and will route accordingly. And once the approvals are recorded, the access is granted for the 2 weeks, and once 2 weeks are up, the access is automatically revoked. Workflows also writes all of these actions with their timestamps in a read-only JIRA issue so that if we need to refer back to our records, we can trust them. And there are some finer things about this implementation that I really appreciate for their elegance. First of all, reminders for aging requests are sent to approvers periodically. Denials from approvers are handled and the requester is notified when that happens. And if a user were to leave Okta while their access is active, the access is revoked upon deactivation of the Okta account. So in this case, Workflows really cuts down on what is otherwise an incredibly time-intensive process that requires a load of manual monitoring. And we have a lot of customer-facing employees, so this is an amazing process for us. All these scenarios are huge wins for us, but there's always more we can automate.
So let's actually talk about that. We've accomplished a lot. We talked about a few things in detail, and Laura listed just a handful. As she said, we have quite a few. We have over 190 workflows in production. So we've done a lot this year. But what comes in the next year? I think it sort of falls into three buckets, but they're all around where automation really matters. One is around lifecycle management. There are a lot more process improvements for us to take on beyond as I went through pre-employee onboarding. And those are process improvements for provisioning, for deprovisioning, for security management. There are always more that we can do. One of the big keys there is around reducing or eliminating any place where we're doing manual efforts, manual provisioning, manual level elevation of privileges, manual deprovisioning, anything we're doing there that's manual, we want to continue to eliminate those. Another, and again, Laura talked about this some, is coordinating what we're doing with our compliance organization around SOX controls and around reporting, because a lot of effort does go into the reporting and the auditing and the verifying that you have the right controls in place, that you followed them, and that you can demonstrate that you followed them. And there are a lot of things we can do there to coordinate Okta lifecycle management with our SOX processes. The second is around CIAM. I talked a little bit about registration as a service with our events registration. Well, we want to make that more and more plug and play. We want to make that really just entirely cookie cutter, so that it requires next to zero effort on our side to plug in, depending on what the event type is, what the audience is, and what needs to be provisioned for that. And the third is really around security and automation. Laura talked about some of those, but there are always more workflows orchestrations available. And really, it's about continuing to strengthen our security culture and to make that so that we don't have to have clever or proactive people. We can have those processes so that those clever people can be doing even more interesting and innovative things. And with that, speaking of innovative things, let's talk about the really cool innovative thing. And Laura's going to walk us through that.
Thanks, Ken. This is stuff I'm really excited about. So last year at Octane, we introduced the Okta Identity Engine and FastPass. My team's been hard at work this year on getting us ready to use it internally. So personally, as a security enthusiast, what I love about the Identity Engine is the modularity it introduces to assurance policy. This means that Okta will actually assess the conditions of an access attempt and relax or tighten security controls around that resource accordingly. So, for example, you can have a policy per resource. Each application can be configured to require different types of authenticators or device states per our security team's guidance. And we also look at device context. So if a device is managed by Okta, we have reasonable assurance that the person who's trying to access the resource is an employee. So we can offer them a more seamless experience. And conversely, we can also lock down certain resources to only corporate devices, but still allow employees to access an app like Slack from their personal device. This way, no matter the combination of device and resource, we're confident that the resources are being accessed safely. And we see a lot of benefits to incorporating OIE and FastPass into our own environment. It'll heighten our FedRAMP and our NIST compliance capabilities, and it'll expand our total addressable market. It adds flexibility to BYOD scenarios, and it simplifies mobile device logins. And ultimately, it's just great for our people. Our employees won't have to waste time on account lockouts or password resets anymore. And our staff who work with the most sensitive data, they don't have to be put through the authentication ringer when they're trying to access a business application like Workday. So I'm really excited to deploy this thing, and I want you to be excited too. Our colleague Mick has put together a demo for us. So let's take a look at FastPass in motion.
Now, before I get into our FastPass demo, I wanted to show everyone what it looks like today for users like me who begrudgingly need to enter a password each time we authenticate into okta.okta.com. And as you can see, lots of typing, too many clicks. So keep this experience in mind as we transition into our demos. Whoa, hold on. Let's pause it here. Where was the sign-in widget? Why didn't I have to enter my username? What about a password, or at least a factor to sign in? Well, Okta Verify paired with Safari's SSO extension provides our end users and customers a seamless authentication flow that requires no input from our end users and takes them directly to their Okta dashboard. No typing, no clicks, easy peasy. Now that we've logged into the Okta dashboard, let's log into Gmail so we can see what that experience looks like. Take notice that we were not prompted for any additional authentication. Since the Okta dashboard and Gmail both have the same app policy requirements, we don't have to provide any additional factors because we already leveraged Okta Verify to initiate our Okta session. Now, the authentication flows that you've seen so far with the Okta dashboard and Gmail has demonstrated app sign-on policies that only require FastPass using Okta Verify. Now, our employees' experience will vary based on the resource they are trying to access. Apps like Salesforce that contain sensitive customer data are going to require a second factor for access. Employees will get the option to select that additional factor, and in this example, we're going to leverage a biometric using Okta Verify as our second factor.
So I hope you're all as excited by that demo as we are to have OIE and FastPass here at Okta. And I want to thank you for attending. We'll have some time for questions, but I just want to do a quick recap that we wanted to share with you what we're doing with lifecycle management at Okta, from our free trial environment and how we do registration to how we actually use it internally for our end-to-end pre-employee to offboarding lifecycle management. So thank you for attending this.
Thank you again, everybody. This is wonderful. I'm really excited to answer your questions.